Joining us now is Yan Liang. She's a professor of economics at Willamette University in the U.S. state of Oregon. I covered the two sessions back in 2018 before the pandemic. I don't think a lot of Western audiences really understand what's going on. I mean, it's such quite a frenzy of activity. You've got sessions, meetings, news conferences, there's speeches. How would you describe it for people who've never had the chance to enter the Great Hall of the People and actually get a chance to see it in action?
Yeah, great to talk to you, Mike. I think this is really the most important economic, political, and legislative meetings in China. And this year is particularly significant because, as China unwinds that zero COVID policies, a lot are on the table, how the economic targets and priorities are going to be. So there are a lot of, economic policies will be announced at the meeting. And there's also very important, ratifications of, leadership transitions. So as we know that Xi Jinping was already reaffirmed as the party's general secretary and also the chairman of the military commission, but this meeting will ratify him as the president of the country. And going forward, there are also many different reform agendas and also legislative processes. So this is really the most watched, I think, political event in China and also around the world.
And a lot of what's tackled during this very brief period of time, they're pressing issues. There are also kind of enormous issues. I mean, when you look at it, you look at stuff like climate change, COVID, how do you emerge from COVID, the difficulties with the China-U.S. relations. What do you expect on those fronts?
Right. So I think, all these important issues will definitely be addressed during these two sessions. So when I look at the economy, so I think most importantly is, there will be the government work report, and there will be a growth target and inflation target and employment targets set at this two sessions. So now it's generally expected that China probably is going to set a relatively high growth target, somewhere between 5 and 5.5%. And it comes to ecological sustainability, that's part of the China's new growth model. And so at the local two sessions around the country, we have heard the buzzwords of green development, low carbon economy and green transitions. So definitely that will be featured heavily in this national two sessions. And of course, the foreign relations, they're very important. And so the sessions are going to be open for foreign reporters. So I think there are a lot of questions to be asked on, Russia war, Taiwan relations, and so on and so forth. So I think definitely there will be clarifications, and there will be, reiterations of China's stance on some of these issues.
You mentioned the government work report. It seems like everybody's fixated on that, and they're always fixated on the number. You were talking about 5 to 5.5%. The growth in the economy, though, how does China achieve that? I mean, back in the day, it was easy to set these targets at 10, 11%, and people would just say, how's that going to happen? And yet, there was so much trade going everywhere. Now are they looking more at a domestic audience, or how do you see them achieving this number?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think this number would not only reflect, China's efforts in boosting the economy in the short term, but also reflect its more sort of a long-term goals. So I think the reason that 5 and 5.5% is reasonable, first of all, is many of the provinces, autonomous regions, 29 out of 31 of them have estimated their growth rate to be, above 5%. So at the national level, right, that would translate into 5 or 5.5%. Now, in terms of the measures, I think we're likely to see measures to try to strengthen, business confidence, improve the business environment, and help the consumers, right, to strengthen their confidence and allow them to, gain more jobs and income. And so we're likely to see some of the usual policies like fiscal spending. We'll probably see a higher deficit to GDP ratio target this year. We're likely to see more, local government bond issuance quota. And again, I think the big direction is we wanted to achieve technological independence. We wanted to be able to engage with, international trade, but with that technology autonomy, and also to, pivot towards more domestic demand. But that does not mean, only inward-looking economy. We definitely will reach out to new trade partners, strengthen the economic ties with, EU, ASEAN, and many other countries.
Yan Liang, always a pleasure. Great insights. Really appreciate chatting with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mike.